Welcome to Who the Hell Am I? I hope somebody can tell me. This is a refreshingly authentic and unfiltered podcast, at least I think so, where we really delve into the essence of living authentically and rediscovering the simplicity of nourishment and holistic living. My name is Heather. I am a certified holistic health coach, and I love getting to the root of problems, illnesses, mindsets, you name it, because I believe that the answer lies at the root. If we can follow the problem to the root, we will find the answer there as well. Instead of looking out in all these places around us, looking to the media, to celebrities, to icons, to doctors, to gurus, for seeking our answers out there, we're missing the message, we're missing the point. The answer lies in our core, at the root. I invite you to join me on a journey of unraveling, if you will, the complexities of modern health and wellness and mindset, where we liberate ourselves from the clutter of trendy diets, perplexing wellness regimes, and mostly all the societal pressures that dictate our lifestyles. In this podcast, I dare you to challenge the shoulds and the have-tos that have long defined conventional notions of health and identity. All right, guys, welcome back. This is another episode of our new series called The Whole Leader. And in this series, we are having conversations with different business owners, business leaders, executives, people who hold different roles in business, but the primary focus is business leaders who lead with a holistic mindset. And so I'm having conversations with people about what that means for them, what that looks like for them, how they incorporate that into their routines, both in business and just in life in general. So I'm excited.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm excited to have Nathan Taubert with us today. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Heather, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm really excited for this conversation. Tell us a little bit, just to get started, tell our listeners a little bit about you and your business and kick it off with that.
Okay, great. So, I'm Nathan. I'm a business owner for 4 years now. So basically, my dad owned a painting business growing up, and me and my family, we all just worked with him for food and shelter. And then once I hit 17, I started to see a little bit of money coming in. But yeah, we learned kind of how to do business as a family and really just watch my dad's example of what worked for him. And he hit it off with people. He just had a really great way with being genuine, being himself. And it just really did well for him. We always had, enough to get by. We always had more than enough. And then so as I grew up, I have a lot of dreams and a lot of passions floating around. And but it's been a process of kind of going within and clearing out some of my, negative and fear-based beliefs that have, in a sense, kind of kept me in one spot. So I've learned how to, what I'm learning how to do is in business, take what you're given from your parents, but also becoming, more of who you really are in that process, and letting go of who your parents were, in a sense. And not all of it, because some of it was great, and and celebrating that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I love about what I learned from those days working with dad and all my siblings was how to have fun while you work, how to see it in a positive way that allows you to enjoy, some of the mundane aspects of it. Because we were painters, so we would just kind of do the same 3, 4 step process every day. We'd go in to a job, prep all the walls, get everything covered, get everything prepared. And then that was like the longest process is the
Yeah.
prep work, which I'm kind of finding that to be the longest process so far in my life is just all the preparation and the covering things and the learning how to get more skilled so you need less covering.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and learning to be efficient and learning to work together in harmony.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and with a family, there's a lot that goes into that. And in some ways, it's really easy because you have people that know your history, that you know their history, and so you're bringing a lot of shared values to the table,
Mm-hmm.
which I think has really been a huge key in our business and in our Taubert Co endeavor, and learning how to be in harmony with each other.
One thing I want to point out for those who aren't familiar with Nathan's business, it's a wallpaper. Wallpaper is, and anything else to that, like,
Yeah, so we started I started as a painting company,
okay.
and in 2020 I moved to Georgia. I didn't really have a job.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of followed my excitement, my and like just my yeah, my passion in a sense to come down. And I had one son and my wife. And so basically we came down. I was like, well, this is kind of stressful. I don't have like my family's here and I don't have a solid work built up yet. It was kind of like a you might say a crazy thing to do. Um, I faced a lot of fear in that little journey there. It didn't make sense because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have it all figured out. My mind didn't have everything in place before, but in the 2 years prior, like it just wasn't, nothing was coming together as I was trying to get a plan and force it. And I spent so much time trying to like get a plan and get it together. And um, eventually I just got tired of sitting around and not having a good enough plan to act on.
Yeah.
Um, and so just kind of had to step out in faith. And then it wasn't a minute too soon, but a place opened up for me and and an opportunity for Juliana and Dominic, I think he was 4 year old at the time, opened up for them to go to Brazil to be with my wife's family who lives in Sao Paulo.
Okay.
And so she went there. I flew them down there and then flew back. And then I was working at the airports and started to look for a place to live and look for work. And just looking to kind of get away from the small town that we came from and just see what it was like in a big city in a sense. So I guess going back a little bit, when when Juliana first came to the US, she got a job as an au pair nanny
Okay.
in Tampa Bay, Florida. So for 4 years we were in Florida, and then I picked up a job at Topgolf. And Topgolf is really where I learned some really pivotal things about business
Hmm.
because their business model was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Until that point, like I'd only seen a business model of, it's about the numbers. We got to grow the company. We got to, make sure that we're meeting our quotas. We got to, get as much money as we can and just kind of like hold on to it and not really share it. And that's what I thought like business was, and I had no interest in business at that point. But when I got to Topgolf, like everything was like completely different. Their
Okay.
business structure, first of all, like their hiring process was like it was like an amusement park, like fun day. Basically, they had like a 2 hour audition for being part of their team and their family, their being like included in what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like they were all about making it fun. And it was just like their audition process was they got 100 people in a room, and they kind of gave like a little lecture, and then they broke us up into groups, and we did like they see who worked well with others, basically by giving us tasks to accomplish together, and try to figure things out together. They asked a few basic questions about you to get you to know your personality, but the main thing that they were looking for was, were you able to have like fun? Were you able to enjoy yourself and be, outgoing with others and engaging? Because that's the kind of atmosphere they wanted to create for their guests there.
Mm-hmm.
And it works like a charm. Like that place is always packed out, but they just like had this environment of family and like and just fun, having fun all the time, and finding ways to make things fun, and also like valuing every task, every like the bus boys and the servers, like we were all at least, I mean, at least in theory, on the same page, like with terms of how valuable it is. Each each job is, and they knew the value of, not labeling yourself, oh, I'm just a bus boy, I'm just a this or just a food. And I was just a food runner
Mm-hmm.
there, but that was like uh just an amazing peek into another way to do business, another way to treat your employees, to offer them, exciting chances to move up the ladder, to grow, and but having fun like the whole time, and it wasn't just a job.
So how has that influenced the way you run your business and handle your staff, your employees?
Yeah.
No, it does.
So I think I don't take it so seriously,
Yeah.
and that helps a lot. Um, I I like to keep it fun. I like to, I mean, we're always joking. That's something that we had growing up, and on the crew, is like we were just cracking jokes all day long between the family and quoting things and whatever, just to keep it fun. So like there's still plenty of that. But I think now it's also like having a common vision
Mm-hmm.
of bringing kind of light into the workspaces that we're going, bringing our love and energy into the spaces that we're working, and also just like enjoying and thriving in an environment where we're like excellence and attention to detail is paramount. And so like learning how to be take the time that it needs and not rush, learning how to enjoy the process of it. Like if you have a meticulous area that you need to cut in around a sink or something, to be able to just enjoy that instead of just like getting stressed out and like, oh, I hope I don't mess this out, but how to like, maintain keeping it fun,
Yeah.
and enjoying it. So I think like that's a huge key, is like, I mean, wallpaper helps a lot because it's like doing art. It's almost like a form of expression,
Mm-hmm.
and a practice in mindfulness, and in in a planning in a sense, but also just like more and more of allowing your natural instincts to kind of come through, and really just like allowing yourself to understand how physics work in a sense, by observing and experiencing like what happens when I cut here, and how is it going to fold here and there, and like that process of discovery is kind of exciting, um,
Huh.
because you like a lot of people will think, well, I just need to learn it so I can be good at it so I can make money with it. But the process of learning it, the process of figuring it out, and like even though it takes a long time to master, it doesn't necessarily have to be any less rewarding once you've mastered it than it is now as you're
Mm-hmm.
starting. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of like imprinting that mindset on the group, that that take as long as you need, because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be worth it. Like we're not here to make a whole bunch of money now and fast. We're here to enjoy the process. We're here to, uh, yeah, to bring our quality and our energy into these homes. And like, I believe that there's a lasting imprint left, as like with not only just like with the wallpaper that we put, but like the energy behind it and the intention behind it. I believe it stays in
Yeah.
these houses, and that's exciting.
I love the mindful approach that you take to all of this. And I was, as you said it, I was literally thinking it's almost like you're leaving bits of your energy in this.
Hmm.
It's haunting in the best way.
Yeah, it's yeah, and it can be whatever it needs to be,
Mhm.
like I think, so much of it is of the reality that we experience is dependent upon our individual focus and belief and definition. And I'm sure people can find a way to not appreciate, our work, but like our job is to just do the very best that we can,
Yeah.
and allow whatever needs to happen to happen. So sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes we don't order enough paper. Sometimes we have an issue where something's not looking right. The seams aren't matching up the way that they should. We have to troubleshoot a lot of things. We have to figure out the best way to make this look good with what we have. And also, like, take as much responsibility as we can. I love taking responsibility for things because, from my perspective, like, the responsibility is the ability to respond. So
Mhm.
you have you give yourself ability to respond, and you're less and less a victim of what happens to you on a job or another client's energy, or like, or whoever it is that, like, it's fun to blame because then you can just kind of give yourself a pass. But if you take responsibility, with that, I believe comes an energy to respond to a situation.
Mhm.
So you have that responsibility, and with it, once you take it, you take with it like a whole barrel of energy that goes with it to handle it. It's like
Huh.
a yeah, like a you tapped in to something bigger than yourself, and
Mhm.
therefore you are more worthy of more resources in a sense.
This whole approach that you take, and this is how you structure your team and how you manage the structure of the jobs and all of that. How do you, I'm curious, if you do like a team meeting or staff training, how does everything that you just talked about, energy wise, mindset wise, mindfulness, how do you impart that to your team, or how does that play a role in your team? Actually, a two-part question. So that one,
Yeah.
how does that all play a part in how you run meetings and trainings, but also your hiring process? And I know that you hire a lot of your family members, but you've grown and you've had to start hiring outside of your family. So, how does that mindfulness help you choose the right people?
Well, I got so excited about your second question that I forgot your first one. So what was
Answer
the
the
first
second
one?
one first.
Okay. So how do I choose? I think it's become more of a how do I attract
Okay.
question. And for me, like, it looks like becoming that first within myself, becoming a picture of what I'm envisioning, becoming my vision, and not necessarily needing. This has been a long journey to kind of discover this, but not necessarily needing anybody else to join me.
Yes.
Um, I think I read a quote on your website today that I'll have to look at it again, but like, basically becoming what you want to see. And what that looks like for me is really taking the time necessary to get my inner world right,
Mm.
to let go of fear, because it really keeps coming back to my fears. Um, they keep coming up.
Yeah.
And like, now that I realize the gift that they are, it's just going through them and getting the lesson from them so that I can let them go. Like, say, oh, thank you. You know what? I'm not going to just shove you down and say, oh, why am I so afraid? No, get away, fear. I don't want to look at you, but I don't know why I'm so afraid of you. And just allowing, well, it'll keep coming up, but just allowing it to come up. And so
Mm.
feel that fear so that you can get the message it's trying to give you. It's like, what are you trying to teach me here? Sit with it, feel it, breathe it out, breathe it in. And like, I've believed like the breath is like the tool for like pumping that deep energy up. And so when you're breathing, you're allowing yourself, like the fear can kind of come out in a sense of your body where it's been stored.
Mhm.
And like you're just like pumping that up and just like releasing it.
Yeah.
And then you're also just getting supercharged with positive life energy, which can never be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Um, and and then from that place, when you let go of your fear, or at least you're able to look at it and say, okay, this is what I've been believing that has made me feel so scared.
Yeah.
I've been believing that um, that things could go really wrong, and I need to be so careful. And um, what if this happens? And in order to fix a problem, I need to focus on it. And that was a huge one for me. That like that's that northern attitude, that I was kind of raised with. Is like once you got to lock in on that problem and really really just be with it, like, and focus on it until you fix it and be afraid of it, but not really address the fear. Just kind of like really know that you have it. And I'm learning that that's not really the most efficient way to get rid of something, is to focus on it. And I mean, allowing it to come up and observing it and feeling it is great, but there's another way. There's another way that you can actually bypass. I believe you can, in some senses, bypass that until the time appointed when it's supposed to come up. But you don't have to live in fear. You can just
Exactly.
you can just let it visit you and teach you, and
Mhm.
less, hopefully.
I like that. Let it visit you and teach you. It's similar to I think we could take that approach with a lot of different emotions and things that we feel, insecurities, whatever. I recently in a coaching session with a client, and we were talking about anxiety and managing anxiety, and she was a school teacher, and she was sharing how her anxiety had been so bad through the days, and it was really affecting how she was showing up in the classroom.
Mm,
And the conversation that we ended up having was, how can you take that anxiety when it's coming up and incorporate it into what you're teaching your kids? Like, maybe the reason you are their teacher and you are struggling with anxiety, maybe it's an opportunity to teach them how to manage their anxiety.
mm,
So,
yeah.
how could you incorporate breath work? Hey,
Hmm.
class, we're going to take a few minutes and we're going to breathe really deeply. She teaches like first and second graders. And,
Wow.
and so it's like you can start to teach, you can take
Mm,
whatever the roadblock is for you or whatever that uncomfortable emotion is for you. And how can you create a really positive outlet for it? So when you're talking about fear and how fear can either, I believe fear can either completely disable you or it can empower you.
mm,
And it's all in how you look at it. And yes, feel it, but then you don't just have to feel it and stay there.
mm,
How do you let it move you forward? Right.
yeah.
So that just,
How do you get the lesson? How do you get the messages telling you so you don't
yeah.
have to feel it forever? Like the more you push it away, the more it's going to keep coming up and
Mhm.
stronger and stronger. I had an experience recently where, well, I've had several. Gosh, I had a couple of like really hardcore fear moments that I thought like I didn't think I was ever going to feel that much fear again. And but it's like showing me like, hey, we're still here. You still really haven't dealt with why we're here.
Mhm.
So you're gonna keep seeing us until you figure out why we're here and the message that we have for you. And what one of them was which this podcast actually brought up, and the idea of being seen and what that means and what it has meant to me and what I believed about being seen growing up, what I was taught about it. And then very fundamental structural beliefs about getting attention, about having attention, about how to handle that. And I never saw how to handle or to get it. And it was always kind of seen as like a negative thing. And learning to let go of that definition and but realizing that if I don't, it's playing in the background and it's affecting everything I do. If I don't really look at it and address where it's coming from, it's not going to stop. It's like this, it's like the fear soundtrack that's kind of overlapping in everything that I do.
Yeah.
And so I've had like, I'll just tell a story. So we went, my wife and I, we went to a conference called Awaken with Danny Morell. And we went there, and I'd been following him on Instagram for a while and just been super inspired with like some of the nuggets of truth or the perspective, some of the perspectives that he'd shared. And I was really interested in like the idea, like there had been like the theme of awakening, the theme of understanding your or connecting with your higher self, and living your fullest potential, like kind of letting go of fear in a sense and going towards love are kind of things that like I had heard him talk about that were really on my heart and mind, like those ideas. And so we went to this conference and it was amazing. And they had like some really cool breath work and really cool moments. But I had like this embarrassing moment there that brought up deep, deep fears. So, and it was so bizarre that like it really helped me to see it in a new light. And I was at the perfect place to be able to address it. I was feeling, it was so weird how it came up. So we had done this breath work, this amazing breath work where we were like even just like we're appreciating, our ancestors, where we came from, like our forefathers who went before us, and getting excited about the idea of taking everything that they've given us and doing something more with it. You know what I mean? Like building on that, not just staying in the same philosophies that they had, not that they would even want us to.
Yeah.
It was just where they were at. And so like incorporating that into our lives now, and just like a state of gratitude for those who have gone before us to get us to where we are. And then just like feeling that empowerment and that identity of like all that my grandfathers had gone through to just survive, so that I could have this experience to really have this awakening, to have this chance to appreciate and become more of who I am. Not like they did, but because of what they did. And so in that state of really self-empowerment, like when it was time to share, like at the end, there was like this moment of like, I was like, I want to express this idea. And and so like I was like the first one, like I raised my hand, like I was going to share, and I actually stood up, and like I was like, I'm going to like I'm going to share a concept that I just received of like the power of connecting to and like bringing, the legacy of your forefathers down the line, and sharing that perspective that I just like felt so excited about. And but it was kind of there was a weird energy there. So he came over to me, but like he looked at me in like a way that like just triggered my fear. Like he was not about like letting me speak. Like it was like this weird thing. Like and like he walked to the microphone. He was going to go to this guy, or to me, but then he was like, well, let me go to this guy first. And but this guy that shared, like, poor guy, like he was getting like he was kind of like in the same boat as me. Like he was going to share something really powerful, but then like the energy of like the host was just like he was giving nothing. Like he was just like, okay, like that kind of energy, like,
wow,
oh, thanks for sharing, kind of like, but like not giving any energy. And so like I watched that, and then all my fears started to come up, boy, and they were strong. And it was like all the voices of the past. It was like, who do you think you are? Like you're looking for attention. Don't you know that that's wrong? Don't you know that like you're just out here, this and that, and like all these voices. And then like his vibe was affirming that. But like it was so weird because I was coming from a place of such self-empowerment and excitement and joy and love. And then to just get like all my fears just was like right there in my face. And I was like, whoa. And it was just like, and then so when it came to me, like I got through it, like I stumbled around and just like, but like all that passion was gone, and all I could feel was like my fears, and like, and I know that it was like him being the perfect conduit to bring up that fear for me. And like the temptation was to like, try to make myself feel better by just like, wow, what a jerk, like to not give any energy to the people you're here to help, like, and what could have been amazing, like all these voices. But then I just realized, no, I believe this is exactly what I needed. And it was because like these are deep fears that I've been facing. These are deep, deep things that I've carried with me forever, since as long as I can remember. And I've been trying to let them go, but whenever they come up, maybe I'll let them go. And they've come up like several other times before, but I've never really gotten the message. You know what I mean? I've like, oh, I've interpreted it. I've said, oh, this must mean that, you know, I should just be quiet. I should just keep to myself. Like I shouldn't pursue, being seen, or like it'd probably be better if I, like, those are the kinds of things that I decided based on what came up. But this time I was like, no, I'm done with this. I'm done with going around this sandpit, like it's time to get out. And so like I just felt that fear. Like I thought about that feeling, and I felt it, like, and I didn't push it away. And I just allowed myself to feel like miserable for a while. Because like, but also like to bring it into a positive light, which I knew that it was, like, deep down, I knew that this was for my benefit, that this was getting like there. It was just too much of a coincidence that, I went from being on such a powerful high to like brought down to as low as I could go, basically. And realizing that like I needed to address some of these fears in order to make this work. And so I looked at what those fears were, and behind that was like a huge fear of of humiliation and embarrassment, and shame was like a big thing in my culture growing up. It was like there was very much secrecy around things. Like you couldn't let people know. It's all survival stuff. You couldn't let people know, that you were whatever you were, because if for some reason it wasn't good enough for them, you're dead. Basically, you're left out out of the tribe, and then that means death. And so like there's a reason we believe these things. Like it's not coming from nowhere, but we got to reevaluate that. Is it still helpful to believe that I'm going to die if I'm seen, if and not loved? Like, do I really need to keep drawing validation from outside of me? That was the biggest thing. Is like switching from drawing validation from parents and people around to source, to coming from within and from God's perspective, from all that is, from the perspective of source, to live your purpose and your passion. You know what I mean?
I can relate to absolutely everything, every single part of what you said. I was raised similarly to you, and so I understand those deep-rooted fears, and for me, I relate it to being a child and those times when, as a child, you let your authentic self out because you haven't been programmed fully yet to not. And
Mm-hmm.
then it gets shut down. you almost like a smack to the face, right? Like it's like you let out the silliest, loudest, craziest part of yourself and you're told to be quiet, you're told that you're too much, or you're stifled in some way, or you're reprimanded.
Yeah. Or if you're sensitive to energy, you just pick it up. You just
Yeah.
like, this is not right. This is not appreciated here.
Yes.
And you just like, okay, I got to hide that part because nobody
Yeah.
likes that.
And you
Yeah, I
carry
know
that
exactly what
through
you're talking
you,
about.
and that goes with you until you become aware of it,
Yes.
you begin to address it. And it does, it has a way of coming up in the most inopportune times.
Well, it's yeah, or the most opportune times,
Opportune
depending on how you,
time. Yeah.
depending on if you're
Perspective.
willing to let go of it. Because if you're not, if you're planning on holding on to that for a while, I feel for you because that's going to keep coming up.
Yeah.
And I feel for myself for how long that, I let that. But at the same time, like how beautiful
Hmm.
because it brought me to this moment.
Hmm.
How
Yeah.
beautiful because now I can choose something different and I'm no longer powerless. And that's a good feeling. That's a great feeling.
It is, and it feels good when you get to start having conversations with people about this, when you start realizing I don't have to be quiet about this.
Mm,
Also, I'm not the only one that dealt with it, that deals with it, and you start to vocalize it and realize you're in really good company, and who else can I help by having these conversations, right? Somebody's going to listen to this podcast and they're going to hear a man such as yourself talking about, and I think it's important to have people who are successful business people. They have achieved great things in their life. They're continuing to achieve great things in their life. But to have a conversation like this, where it's getting to the realness of
mm.
everything that we feel, and to know, oh, okay, successful people aren't exempt from this, right? So, because I don't know about you, but my vision before I did a lot of the work that I've, done and continue to do on myself, I had a vision of successful business leaders,
Mm,
and I was not one of them. I did not fit that vision that I thought I had to fit, to be in that category. I thought that they were just strong all the time, courageous all the time, no fears, no insecurities, no imposter syndrome, none of this. I now know that that's complete bullshit, but um there's this, I think there tends to be this image that we think that we have to fit, we have to look and behave this way to be in this classification. And I think it's
mm.
really important to create space for these conversations, um, to get out there.
Yes. So thank you for doing that. I really, really, really appreciate that.
I think in a way it's also my own way of dealing with very similar fears, right? The fear of being
Yeah.
years
What a
ago.
perfect way.
Yeah, no, seriously, years
It's a
ago,
weekly thing. You're going to get through them quick.
when I first I was going to school to get my health coaching certification. And I was at the time a client of a women's empowerment coach. And in her group, it was a group coaching setting. And every week, one of our assignments was we had to go live in the group. And I had never gone live. I didn't know how to go live. I had immense fear of being seen and heard, just
Mm,
like you're talking about. So I certainly didn't put myself out there. But it was like, okay, Heather, you're going to have an online business. You have to get comfortable with being seen and heard. That's a huge fear. I can relate to everything you were saying, because that is one of the biggest fears to kind of
yeah.
navigate. And we had to go live once a
What,
week.
what, what's that fear for you? What's behind that fear? What do you think is the voice? What's the story that you're telling yourself with that particular fear? Because I know mine. I'm interested in yours.
Yeah. So mine, again, stemming from my childhood, criticism and judgment. Like, what if
Mm,
I say or do something wrong? What are people going to think of me? What if I speak honestly? and it's not received? What if I
Mhm.
let out my,
Misunderstood.
yeah, I'm misunderstood if I'm authentic and I'm real? And I'm not talking about being honest as in being mean or
Hmm.
hateful, but just what if people who are in my closest circle no longer want to accept me?
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and again,
What what would that look like? Like what I like to do with that is like play it out. Worst case scenario. So then you can feel as much of that fear as I can.
yeah.
So worst case scenario, I'm being me and everybody takes it the wrong way, which is that's a big one for me,
Mhm.
is like feeling like I know me. I'm genuine. Like this is coming from a good place, but then everybody else has their own interpretation. Oh, this he's just one. And like if I spend time like thinking about what they're thinking, that's when like it throws me off. But like that's what I'm learning to let go of because that's none of your business. But feel what the worst case scenario, so you can go down that path. Feel like, okay, if I'm rejected, if everybody takes this the wrong way, let's imagine people watch this podcast and they're like, oh yeah, like whatever. Worst case scenario, like that I'm never gonna hire a wallpaper installer like that or whatever. Whatever the worst thing could be that would scare you the most.
Yeah.
And just feel how that feels and just kind of see how silly it is. Because
Mhm.
once it doesn't really make sense, like you're like, okay, I still have that fear, but it doesn't make sense because I've never like I've never been in a place where I didn't have food to eat. I've never been in a place where, like I'm gonna die
Yeah.
because of people's. I could go out, live in the mountains the rest of my days and be fine. Like there's more than one way to exist in the world. And like when you think it has to be in society that you're just, you have to function within these realms, and if you get out of it, then you're dead. Like that's just not true.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also within society that you can bring your authentic self, and it can be so valuable if you
Mhm.
can let go of that fear.
Mhm.
And like I have those same fears. Like what if I'm misunderstood is probably one of the loudest ones because I felt very misunderstood from my mom growing up. I didn't feel like well, she'll even admit like she thought I was like a little devil. She was convinced that like, well, she had a lot of bad experiences with men. And so she just was so afraid of what I might become because I was
Mhm.
a man and I was the first one. She had three daughters and then me.
Okay.
And so she was afraid that I was going to become like a bad person. And so like her fear of that focused so much of that energy on me. And like I felt like I was just being a kid. I was just being myself. But her fear manifested itself so strongly into like her interpretation of my actions that she misunderstood me basically. And so that's what happened when I was being myself growing up. And but realizing that it's so different now. And to my mom's credit, like she had 10 kids that she homeschooled, well processing all her trauma. And she was doing a damn good job. Like I always felt loved by her. I always felt cared for, and she did so well at this. These are just things that were subconsciously going on in her world that was just automatically coming out for her to deal with. And it was perfect.
Yeah.
And it brought me to this point, and once again, that's perfect. So like these fears, like even once you really get to what's behind them, you're not going to find what you think you're going to find. You're going to find something better. You're going to find something amazing. Once you take a look at these, you're going to realize kind of how silly it is that you keep playing these same stories over without looking at why they're there. Because once you do that, everything changes.
Mhm.
And then it's like you literally have a completely different reality that you start
Mhm.
to exist in.
Yeah. So with that fear, that story of as you were a little boy and your mom basically working through her own, stories in
Yeah.
raising you, I'm curious now as a dad of two boys yourself, how does that ever come up for you? I know, I'm sure it does.
Yeah, okay, it jumps up all the time. All the time. And but like only recently been able to kind of understand it and interpret it as more than just doing what my parents did. Like saying, okay, like this must be stopped, this must be controlled. Um, this isn't going to be liked in society, so you better not do it. Like those kinds of like is trying to prepare them for the real world and help them out, like help them to experience my reality the way that I did. And that's just not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Apparently, so learning how to give them a space to be who they are, to not let my fears, like to continually choose love over fear. I think that's the simplest way to say it.
Yeah.
Continually choosing love over fear. And if it's what I'm about to tell them based in love, or is it based in fear? If I trace it back to the roots, where's it coming from? This, what I'm about to say, what I'm about to, this advice, this warning, this whatever it is it coming from my place of love, of knowing that they could have a completely different experience than I ever had, and so therefore, like a lot of my fears are obsolete,
Yeah.
and do I really need to press them on them, or can I just allow them to experience a completely new reality and not just assume that they're going to go through the exact same world that I went through, because that doesn't really make any sense.
Mhm.
And say they're going to be going through possibly, quite possibly, a much better and a more amazing world than what I went through. And I don't actually have the information from my experience that's going to make that much of a difference. There is some of it that will make a lot, and giving them a safe space and giving what I do have, but not from a place of this is what you also have to do. Just from a place of this is what I did and what I learned. And it's just so much more, I think, attractive to kids that way, when it's not from a place of now you better do this too, but from a place of this is what here, hey buddy, hey, I'm a friend of yours. Here's what I learned, and you can apply it or not. And either way, I'm going to love you, because that's unconditional love. And I think fear is all the conditions of love. It's like, I'll love you when, and especially when, and if you, and
So
but
true.
unconditional literally means no conditions. Like if you check out the dictionary version of unconditional, um, and then we go like, well, yes, but I still need a few conditions, right? Because what if and what if, but look at that. That's fear. That's fear talking.
Yeah.
Do we really need to listen to fear? And maybe we do. Maybe we do until we learn the lesson. Because if you really believe that these bad things will happen, and your kid has already developed those beliefs as well, then there's a good probability that those types of things will be attracted. And so you can work with what you have. You can work with the beliefs that you have and realize if you're not ready to let go of fear, that's okay. You're not a bad person for holding on to it. So this brings me to another story of just that. Like, and it was last 2 nights ago. Me and Matthew were sitting by the fire, and he was like, "So what's behind all this?" He asked a really good question, and I was like, "I think shame. I think shame and fear is behind this." And I was like, okay, so I'll let that go. But then I was like, but I felt like my shame was talking to me. I was like, are you sure about that? You sure about that? Like, you sure you won't need me later? You sure I might not come in handy? You sure? You sure I might, like, you might not be stupid for letting me go? Remember, it could happen again. These. And so I was like, yeah, you're right. It could. Uh, Um, and then like in that moment, I wasn't able to really let go of it. But like that's the thing. It doesn't have to be Like it slowly dissipates, or it dissipates all at once. Fear can leave in so many ways. It's not just one way that it
Mhm.
has to go. And like even talking about it, I feel like even though I felt like in that moment I didn't let go of fear and I held on to it. And there was a couple other instances where like I made choices out of fear and I started to beat myself up for it. I was like, shit, like I thought I was brave. I thought I could handle this. I thought I was, I thought I was past this, whatever. And then I'm like, okay. But actually, just that whole experience did allow me to let go of a whole bunch of it
Mhm.
because I did actually look at it and I had to because it was so strong. And then when I let go of it, it was like, well, it's a gradual thing, but like in this moment, I just noticed that I don't feel shame. I don't feel as much fear, so I must have let it go.
Mhm.
And and maybe there's still some more left, but like I feel like it's going to be coming up and in the perfect way.
Yeah.
So there's no real rush to get there. There's no rush to let go of everything, and that's one of the things that I've dealt with because like when I get passionate about something, like I'm competitive, and I want to like get it out. I want to like get to the end of this, like really accelerate this.
Yeah.
Um, but then, that's an exciting way to live because it brings really strong situations. But there's more graceful ways to do it. There's more natural ways, in a sense, to allow it to happen organically and naturally. Um, and both paths are valid. So
Mhm.
I think I do prefer that path of like really attacking it just because like I want to use these years in the prime of my life not controlled by fear. I would prefer that. I
Mhm.
would really prefer to not be controlled by shame at this point. That
Mhm.
would be nice.
Mhm.
That would be good. To be able to say, okay, I'm 31
Mhm.
and let's go. Let's do this without that for a while and see what happens. At least I know what happens when I choose fear. And I think I'm finally kind of done with that.
Yeah.
Maybe not all the way yet, but I'm getting to the end of that path. So yeah.
I think too, the more it's always a lot scarier to let these things go and to even face them and acknowledge
Mm,
that they're there when you're kind of earlier on, and then you get almost used to, okay, I know this is going to come up, and I know I can face it. You get more courage, you get braver with facing the things. It's like peeling back the onion layers, and it's like, I know there's going to be another layer under here, and I know
mm,
I've faced it before, I've peeled it back before, I can peel back the next one too.
wow.
I feel like, at least that's been my experience, is okay. Yep. I've My courage grows and my bravery grows in facing these things because I know I've done it and I've succeeded before. I can succeed again. And it's
Mm,
not going to necessarily look the same way. It's not going to feel the same way. It's not going to show up the same way. I might be blindsided by it, but I don't stay down quite as long as I once did. Yeah.
yeah. And then celebrate that.
And celebrate that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you could celebrate the whole process.
Mhm.
So why not?
Yeah.
And and what that does is it just infuses it with such great life energy, such positive energy. When you celebrate, anytime you celebrate something, you're infusing it with positive energy. And then just watch what happens.
Yeah. I was talking with someone. I was actually doing another podcast recording yesterday, and she said, how did she word it? She said, celebrate the, I can't remember the word she used, but basically when you're down, when you have a setback, when you have something happen that doesn't feel good, celebrate that. And that was such an interesting perspective for me. But I love it. And right hand in hand with what you're saying, we don't just have to celebrate when we're feeling high and we're feeling, positive about everything and something really
Yeah.
celebrate those moments that are coming this along to show us something, to reveal something, to teach something. And
Mm.
I think, if we can have that perspective
Yeah.
celebration, that's
Yes.
going to help us find the lesson.
Well, once you face the fear, you don't take it as seriously because the fear makes it seem like this really scary, life-threatening, important thing, when in reality it's just an epic step on the journey.
Mhm.
It's just part of the story. It's
Mhm.
just part of the experience, the journey, and you can celebrate that
Yeah.
because there's nothing better at the end. It's
Yeah.
about now. It's not about getting there. And then yeah, and then you celebrate the in it, and like you said, the things that don't seem good. I mean, you can watch your definitions and what you label good, because you could actually label everything good and then get everything to happen
Yeah.
that's in a sense good, because yeah, it really is about how you define it.
Yeah.
If you define it as this terrible experience, you're going to continue getting that fruit out of that tree. It's like you planted a terrible experience tree. But if you define it as a beautiful, perfect experience, then watch how you can just pull so much good out of it. Like this experience for me, like it took me a while, the one with the crowd embarrassment. It took me a while to define it. Like I tried right away to define it as a positive because I knew it was good for me, but I couldn't see at all how it was possibly good for me. It didn't make any sense how this could, but I just like chose to say, okay, this came at the right time. And then I started to see little by little, but the temptation was to just make myself the victim.
Yeah.
Um, look at the negatives of it, just zero in on that, like I told you before, the tendency, the belief to fix something, you got to look at, you got to really like focus on it, focus on the negative. But when I focused on the negative, it just got worse and worse, and I didn't feel like there was a way to pull anything positive out of it. But then there were times when I was able to look at it and say, wow, like I'm a different person because of that. Like I've become, like I learned so much from that, and I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about what I actually fear.
Mhm.
And now I can have a perfect chance to evaluate something so deep and core in my being. And thank goodness it feels strong and powerful, because that's how I know how strong and powerful I can be once I let it go, in a sense.
Mhm.
So yeah, celebrating that, celebrating the embarrassment, celebrating the failures, even
Yeah.
celebrating. Yeah, you can. I'll just go ahead and give permission to anybody who's looking for it to celebrate anything, things that go wrong. And you don't have to make a big deal out of it, but inside you can just be like, I can't wait to see how this plays out. I can't wait to see what good comes from this, because I know that everything always benefits me.
Mhm.
And I can't wait to see how this is going to benefit me.
I I think that's the most beautiful and powerful way to approach anything in life, and
Yeah.
business too. Like I think that's amazing. So I know you practice breath work and meditation. Those are some of the big tools that you use. What about diet? How does diet play into your
That's a great question. So, yeah, I'm on this we're all on our, personal diet journeys from start to finish. And one of the things I'm really taking a look at, and I'm glad we're having this conversation because I want to, pull on some of uh your knowledge and experience on this, but also like realizing for me what I have believed about diet
Mhm.
um to this point. And I'm just super excited about the possibility, and I'm still testing out, like you could say it's my quantum theory that I'm testing out about what I'm going to believe about my diet. Because as we know, there's a million perspectives on it, and none of them are the same. And there's no one does it for everybody.
Very
And
true.
so for me, I'm going down this experiment of like, I still have some beliefs about certain foods that like are good versus bad, that I've labeled goods and bads.
Mhm.
And I'm learning how to decide which of those I want to, like, working with those beliefs that I have currently. For example, really believing that sugar is bad. Like processed sugar is bad, but like I was also raised that you can have quite a bit of it before it's actually, but then there's always the fear that it's long-term diabetes down the road, long-term problems. But I'm learning how to take a look at that belief and say, okay, just like I'm doing with everything else, this is what I learned from my parents. This is what I learned from my grandparents, from what they knew. What do I actually want to believe about this? What do I want to believe about food? And how much of it do I want to obsess over? And because I've seen my mom, and I had a perfect master class now that I think of it, of my mom going through all these phases of diets and trying so many different things and doing a juice diets, all this cleanse, no processed sugar. And we were kind of at her mercy because she was the cook of the family.
Yeah.
So we went through a whole spectrum of diets and health food kicks and only eating this and never eating that. Um, and then we had some friends that were doing really well with this extremely strict diet of like only they never put one unhealthy thing in their bodies, and just like having that contrast of like their lives and like and seeing, you know, like the fruits of other people and their diets and people who would just eat, you know, junk all the time, and you know, and the results of that, and then just realizing how much belief is factored into that. So for me, like with my diet, I've gone from feeling really guilty every time I eat something that I've heard is not healthy, um, to more of a place of like where I'm currently at right now is like, well, I will do enough breath work. I will do enough like these things that I know that supercharge my body, and I'll eat the high vibrational foods that I know. I'll eat healthy when I can, when I feel like I need a boost, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time obsessing over diet for me personally, because I've tried that and it was stressful, and I couldn't, like, it wasn't flowing. It just wasn't flowing. Like, and I'm kind of learning to take that as a hint. If it's not flowing, it might not be for me. And what's flowing for me is to really intentionally believe the best about my body's capabilities. Believe that my body is an amazing, evolving machine that can keep up with whatever I put into it. But also, there are some fundamental beliefs about certain foods that if I do eat those, I'm going to have to be aware that there are underlying beliefs that are going to produce symptoms, you know, like too much sugar, you know, sugar crash, breakouts, all this stuff. Um, and so, like, I have to work with that. And so, if I really want to do amazing, I work with that belief and stay eating healthy. And and the beautiful thing about that is because other people sometimes are even raised with stronger beliefs about food than I was, and are really held captive by what they believe, in the sense that like they really believe that eating something is wrong, but they also believe that they can't stop, and therefore they are in this terrible cycle of believing so terribly about what they're eating, and then believing so bad about what it's going to do, and like, but then also believing that they can't do anything else, or that it's not worth it, or would take too long, or whatever. And so like seeing that contrast, and realizing that working within a belief structure of eating healthier. So like I try to eat like 80% healthy and then 20% not healthy, just because like I think that like where my beliefs are at right now, that definitely works for me.
Mhm.
I feel really healthy. I feel like energized, and then I drink coffee, and that's been a big one for me, like deciding what I believe about that.
Mhm.
And there's some times when I take a break from that, but what I realize is I don't like rules. I don't like unnecessary rules. And so when I put unnecessary rules on myself, I don't thrive as much in any way.
Yeah.
And when I say, like, when I beat myself up for doing something, it's better to not have a hard rule than to have a hard rule and keep breaking it, because then that just destroys your confidence in yourself and you feel so powerless.
You already feel like a failure.
Yes.
And that's what I tell people all the time when they're beginning to make diet changes or lifestyle changes. And it's set a goal that is realistic. So let's say you're cutting sugar out of your diet, for example. We'll just stay with sugar. Let's say they have this goal of cutting out refined sugar,
Hmm.
only natural sweeteners. All right, so set a goal for your first week. And that goal can be something like, I'm gonna I'm gonna go sugar free for 2 days this week, or I'm gonna really focus on my sugar intake in the evenings before I go to bed. Like you can break it down to
Sure.
as you need to, based on if you have times where that's more of a challenge or whatever. So, but make it a small goal because then you're likely to achieve it, not just achieve it, but you're more likely to exceed it.
And then you can celebrate.
And then you can celebrate and you're going to feel already that you succeeded. And then you can
Yes.
gradually increase that goal as you move forward and give yourself, I highly recommend a visual tracker, whether
Mm.
that's a calendar or that's uh, something small like a container of paper clips on your desk and an empty container. And every day that you meet this, you move a thing over, a paper clip over, so it could be whatever helps you, but give yourself a visual tracker so you
Mm.
can track that goal. And as you're increasing it, continuing to track it, and also give yourself a reward at the end, and not a
Mm.
food-based reward, but a reward that is health-minded. So maybe you have a book that you've been wanting to read and you haven't bought the book yet. Well, if I meet this goal, I'm going to buy the book on the weekend. So
That sounds like a really fun way to do it. Is this what you do personally?
this is what I do personally and what I tell my clients to do.
Wow.
So make it a fun experience. It doesn't have to be this drudgery. That's what takes health and wellness, and whether it's eating healthy, whether it's starting to exercise, but meditate, read, whatever your specific goal is, it can either be the hardest, most drudgery drenched task that you've ever tried, or it can be fun and exhilarating and exciting.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
you choose. You get to decide.
you really
And
do.
like you kind of like it really comes back to, you have to let go of the idea that focusing on the issue and the problem is going to bring the solution. It's
Mhm.
not. It's focusing on the solution and how that feels, and how getting that body that you want, how being as vibrant and energized as you really want to be, and how much that's going to bring you, and just keeping your eyes zeroed in, laser focused on that prize allows it to come to you. Whereas if you think, okay, yeah, I failed. See, how many times have I failed now? I failed one, two, three. Oh yeah. And then I always get to this point, don't I? And then, and yeah, this is going to really suck because I'm going to have to do this and I'm going to have to do that and I won't be able to do this.
Uh-huh.
And, and you just dig yourself a hole that makes it even harder to get out of.
Yeah. And always, like, to what you were saying before about going behind the belief structures and what's behind it, you can do the same thing with food.
Hmm.
So what is your literally an actual conversation I had with somebody earlier this week, and she said, I'm addicted to sugar and it doesn't matter what I do, I can't stop. Um, and so
Wow,
we
that's a
had
strong belief.
we had a lot of talk, diving into that. But what I left her with was, I said, I challenge you to explore what are some other ways that you're craving sweetness in your life.
Mm.
So sometimes food is a band-aid, if you will, for
Mm-hmm.
much deeper issue. And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I asked that question of her, she's like, "Oh," and she had an immediate answer.
Wow.
And I'm not getting what I need here. And I'm missing this and I need this. And then that opened up a whole other conversation. But if you ask yourself that question around whatever it is in your diet that you feel like you don't have control over, or when somebody says, I can't stop this, or I crave this and I don't know how to control it,
Mm.
you got to look beneath it. The food is probably a band-aid for something much deeper. And if you get to the root of what that is, then and journaling is a great way to do that. Start asking yourself questions in a journal, start answering those questions in a journal. And when you start getting to the root of that, you're going to start realizing you have a lot more power over that food because you're attacking the root and you're finding other
Mm.
ways to bring yourself what you need, what you're craving on a soul level,
Wow.
which is different than actually the food per se.
Wow. That's so profound. The idea of attacking at the root. And yeah, because if you keep spraying the leaves, like it's it's such a temporary thing. And when you actually go to the root of it, it's permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, all the work can be done at the root. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the symptoms that come up, like I think of like acne flare-ups and things like that. And I've had a long battle with acne, and I'm just like seeing what's at the root of it. Like, and I think it really is these shame and fear-based beliefs of like not wanting to be seen. And the root is like I've tried so many topical solutions and nothing has done it for me. But like at the same time, I kind of have this. I'm at this point now where I'm like, I don't want anybody to have to deal with acne that I know. And so I feel like along this process of going through it, it's given me a lot of empathy for people who have it, and it's given me a passion for helping them and a passion for finding a solution and finding beliefs and going at what's at the root of that. What's at the root of breakouts? Like what's the indication? Like, and I've been asking that question for years, like, and it's kind of coming into focus now, but there's still, missing pieces of it. But what is at the root of this, and how do I attack the root cause of these things? And I feel like it's following the fear trail, because what it does is, like, for me, like, one thing I've noticed about my acne is that it comes in times when I'm really anxious, when I have a lot of anxiety, and also like it comes when yeah, just when I'm feeling like I'm about to do something, um, where I'm going to be like on camera, or if I'm going to like do a show or something like that. And like there is like a lot of science behind the cortisol and what comes up in those times. But also like I feel like there is like an underlying root fear that I have that's correlated in some way,
Mm-hmm.
and like a self-perpetuating cycle, because I haven't been willing to address that, where things start to pop up just so that you can look at it, and it's like saying, hey, here's something to address. And I feel like as I'm willing to address that, like I am starting to see less and less. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people, because I think like it's mostly in those teenage years that we go through that, supposedly. But then even at 31, and watching in my family too, it kind of continue, and that inspiring me to really look deeper at what's the root of
Yeah.
it, just because I'm watching the people around me and myself just kind of blindly stumbling over why, and just kind of like accepting it, but then not really understanding it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like anyone who's on a weight journey. I won't say weight loss because sometimes it's needing or wanting to put on weight, but there's always a lot behind that too,
Mm-hmm.
or disordered eating of any kind, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
purging or it's binging or whatever. There's always a lot behind that. And a lot of times that has to do with being seen also, right? Either I need to keep myself safe, and that
Yes.
be putting on weight, or it can be making yourself smaller. So
Mm-hmm.
I gotta shrink myself. I've gotta make myself less visible. There's just a whole psychological world behind anything that we face with health and wellness, whether it's weight related or food related or skin related. It doesn't matter what it is, but there's always a whole lot more happening beneath the surface.
Yeah.
You got to dive into. So it's a lot more than just, well, I'm going to go on a diet and do this.
What's
You
going
got
to
to
come
be,
up when you do that?
you got to be looking at the mindset too. And
Yes.
that's always an approach that is not usually the first approach people take.
Yeah. And where's the mindset coming from? And do I still prefer that mindset? Because if I do, then I get to keep getting more of what I've had.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I ready to do something different and get something different, getting a
Yeah.
different result?
Yeah.
But yeah, it really comes back to the mindset, belief, definition, um, yeah, creation, experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a powerful conversation.
Yeah, we dove deep.
You did. What are some final words that you would want to leave with our listeners just on anything that we've touched on today?
Mm. Well, I would invite people to join me on an experience of letting go of fear in
Mhm.
all its forms and really choosing to follow love and but to the best of your ability. And when fear come up, which it will, just appreciate it and bless it and thank it and yeah, and use it for your benefit.
Mhm.
And but follow love. And I wanted to talk a little bit about like the idea of trust and openness and
Yeah.
what can happen for you when you go with that. And in business, trust is such a huge thing. Like it's been a huge thing forever. And in relationships, in every relationship, it's a huge thing. And I think it always will be. And the idea of trusting other people and trusting yourself. And I think kind of seeing that there really isn't too much difference between those two things.
Mhm.
And when you can learn to trust yourself, when you can learn to trust your excitement, what you're passionate about as a guide, in a sense, for your next step, and not needing to know exactly how it's going to work out, but to take that step because you have to have a certain level of trust in order to do anything. And if your trust is lacking, you're going to do nothing. And then you're going to get fat. And then you're going to be like, oh, because I don't trust myself enough, like to do, like confidence is so key. It really is, because that's trust. That's a deep level of trust in yourself that says, I trust myself enough to take an action. And so like getting to that point where you can at least take an action, and you're not going to know if it's going to work out for good. And that's why it's called trust, because you don't know for sure that it's going to be okay. You don't know. And if you did know, it wouldn't be as fun.
Yeah.
Because once you get into it and start trusting and start having so many fun experiences because you did, and so many new stories because you trusted something, that opens up a whole journey of abundant life,
Yeah.
which is what I'm passionate about, is not just living and existing and being safe, but actually what does abundant life look like for me,
Mhm.
particularly not what somebody else's abundant life looks like, but
Mhm.
what does my abundant life look like, and being the fullest expression of that, and offering that vibration to the world for them to take or leave,
Yeah.
because either way I'm doing my thing and I'm enjoying it.
Mhm.
Um, and you can actually do it alone. And when you let go of the need to do it with other people, it seems like other people come and do it with you.
Yes.
So take the action by yourself, like you did with this podcast, and then watch what happens when you
Mhm.
attract other people on that path. Only, and not a minute before, you step out and trust and do something that maybe is uncomfortable because of the fears you have. Maybe you have a lot of really good reasons of why it won't work because of what has happened in the past.
Mhm.
But that's just the past, and you are in the eternal now where you can create. And so why not design abundant life? Why not have the most abundant life you can imagine, and use your imagination as like a guide as well to tap into who you truly are? Because I think the imagination is directly connected to something that's in our true deep being,
Mhm.
and it is trustworthy. But
Yeah.
the only way you can find out is if you actually trust it. And you can find out the opposite of that. And I did for years. I believed I wasn't trustworthy.
Mhm.
I believe I wasn't. I couldn't trust anybody, or at least to a certain extent. And then I got to experience the proof for that. People showed up in my life all the time that weren't trustworthy, and nobody trusted me, like in certain situations. And and so like I'm really done with that one. I'm ready to stop, believing that I'm trustworthy, and other people are untrustworthy. And what I've found in business is the more I trust people, the more trustworthy they become. And I can actually pull the best version of them out by trusting in them.
Mhm.
And that's helped me so much with delegation and the ability to expand, because you can't expand if you're holding on so tight to control and needing it to look a certain way. And so, like with our company, such a huge part of that has been like with Bruce and the rest of the team, and like allowing them to take over different responsibilities, and just like trusting them in that sense, and then not trusting that they're going to be perfect and that they're not going to make mistakes, but trusting that in the long run, in the big picture, it's going to be better. And that's an act of faith that is highly rewarded. I think to anybody who's learned how to let go of certain things that they always felt like I have to do because it has to be right, if you can let go of that and be willing to embrace whatever comes from that
Mhm.
and know that it's going to serve you in a positive way, then you are free from that fear. Then you get to experience the reward of trust, because trust is so rewarding and so worth it. In a relationship, it's so rewarding and so worth it. In a marriage, it's worth doing whatever it takes, but whatever it takes really starts with trusting yourself. And until you trust yourself, it's going to be really hard for anybody to trust you.
Right,
And
because
yeah,
to what you said it way back at the beginning of this conversation about attracting,
yeah,
you will attract in whatever that trust frequency, if you will, is.
yes, yes. Whatever one that you fostered through your beliefs, whatever one that you're currently at, you're going to
Yeah.
see like, if you, and distrust is a lower frequency vibration. It's a lower vibration. And when you put that out, it's what you get back. What you put out is what you get back. And so if you're putting out trust, you're going to get trust back. And I've definitely seen that confirmed in our business. And it's been a journey because, like, I have a past of, like, everybody has a past of what you've done that has got you to this point. And I could look back at times when I shouldn't have trusted people, and or I didn't follow through on something, and so I was untrustworthy. And I can focus on that to a sense, but that's going to kind of produce more of that. So I want to just focus on being trustworthy, being trusting, and by keeping my focus on that, that's the only way I found myself to really achieve that and see the results for that. Whereas if I'm focusing on the times that I wasn't trustworthy, or that I wasn't trusted, or that others weren't trustworthy to me, then I was able to really experience more of that.
Yeah. It's that same belief that you are the sooner we can come to the reality that we are the creator of our,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yes,
you really are, then you can approach life from a much more empowered place.
exactly. That's the key. That really is the key. When you start realizing your own power, it starts from there, and you have to realize you're worthy of it first. And I
Yeah.
think you and I, in our background, was the perfect contrast of what it looks like to not be worthy about anything, and to just revel in our unworthiness and just really soak it up. And who could be more unworthy than me? And how that was like that was like that was the goal, is to be the most unworthy, so that the savior could be the worthy one, and we could just diminish in that. And but like, what's the value in that? What's the value in diminishing the creation? Like, if you believe that God created you, what's the value in diminishing your worth? If you believe that you're connected to that, then why wouldn't you want to be a healthy member of that body? Why wouldn't you want to actually believe you're worth something, so that you could attract energy, so that you could actually be worth something
Yeah,
or bring
and
value?
perform, yeah, bring value and perform tasks that are benefiting the world and increasing that value and sharing that.
Yes. And
Imagine,
not a moment before you believe that you're worth it. Not a moment before you believe that you are loved, and you accept that love and receive that love. Uh, and then you're plugged in. You're plugged into source, and you've got so much to give. And until then, you're running on low battery, because you're getting drained from sources, but you're not allowing yourself to be worth plugging in.
Mhm.
You're not saying, I'm worth charging. Like, you're just like, I gotta make it work with this little energy that I have, and everybody always needs it. Getting so many phone calls all the time, but it's like, you can't do any of that unless you charge your phone, you know?
Scarcity, scarcity mindset at its,
Hmm.
and
There's
instead of,
not enough. The belief that there's not enough for me, and therefore I can't give. When the actuality is, there's so much available for me because I'm worth it. And then I have so much to give from there. Like, you could literally plug into me, because I can pull energy from everywhere, because I believe I deserve it from everywhere.
Mhm. Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good. So good. Any other thoughts?
Well, what yeah, what about you? What are your thoughts? What's come up for you? Yeah, what's your vision going forward for your podcast, your channel? What are you building?
I am building, and it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
So it was December, I think, of last year that I started this podcast, and it was literally a split-second decision. I hadn't really been thinking about starting one. And how I got to it was I kind of took a break from not my business altogether, but like from what I thought I was building in my business, because it was feeling like a lot of work. And I don't mean I was having to work on it every day. It was feeling forced.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, and I don't feel that when you're creating what you're supposed to create, yeah, you're going to put in work, you're going to put in hours, you're going to put in a lot of effort, but it shouldn't feel forced. It should feel like it is flowing. And I was feeling very out of flow and very forced. And so I kind of took a pause from a program that I was creating at the time, and things, social media content, everything was feeling very just forced energy. And I was like, this isn't right. And I actually went to my journal and I started journaling around what did I enjoy doing as a kid? When I
Mm-hmm.
was a little girl, and what were the things that lit me up. And I just started writing a list, and it was like I liked sitting by this rock, and I would write poems, and I would write songs, and I would record them with my dad, and I liked to dress like this in crazy colors, and I like to write, and I like to all these things. And it was like, okay, come back to that. You have to come back to that's your authentic self. So
Woo!
anything that you create from that authentic being inside of you, which we learn to cover up.
Defense. Yeah.
We learn like this is what an online coaching business has to look like, and this
Mm-hmm.
social media content has to look like. And if you're not posting every day and going live this many times a week, then you're not doing it right. And that's what I had felt myself getting caught up in. So I had to literally come home to myself by sitting with my journal for several days and just kind of like come home to that little girl in me that was like, just, I don't care. Like,
Wow.
this is what I like to do. So it was like, okay, I like to write. I like to speak. How can I start tapping into those things now? And that's when I picked up on my blog, and that's when I started my podcast.
And you also like to write and to paint and to make music as well?
I do.
Wow. You do
So
those
like
things?
I like to be expressive. And what's interesting is I haven't created art in a long time. And that is something I enjoy. But I started picking back up on my blog. That's when I literally started my podcast that day that I wrote that down. It's like, just start talking. Start talking. And the first couple episodes of my podcast were me just reading my blog, like things that I had written, and I just read them. And it was like,
Wow.
don't put any thought into what it has to be like. Just
Just get the flow going.
get it going. And also, what I had to take my mind away from was, how is this going to generate money? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, stop.
Doesn't matter. Money comes from everywhere.
Hey, and you don't have to think. And then what was interesting was I started doing the podcast, and it was feeling good. It felt good. And I had somebody say to me, a very close friend, somebody that I have always looked at as a business role model. And she messaged me one day and with some suggestions on how to create some new social media content. And she said, my advice to you is stop with the inspirational podcast and start creating content like this.
Mm.
And I felt like everything in me like shrivel up. Like I was like,
Mm.
oof, no. No, like that was literally like my
Whoa.
authentic self being like shut down again. And I was like,
Not again.
not again.
Yes.
Not again.
Wow.
So
That's why, like, even well-meaning, beautiful people in our lives don't get to have the ultimate voice in our lives. You know,
yeah,
they get to share their perspective. We can choose to match it, and
yeah,
sometimes it's great for a while. Sometimes working with somebody, you choose to match their frequency and you go with them, but it can't diminish your original signature frequency of who you are.
yes, exactly. And so, kind of a long answer to your initial question of what am I creating? What is my goal? It's ever evolving. And this podcast has ever evolved. It became, like I said, the first couple episodes were me reading my blog. Like, this is what I'm about. And then I kind of did a couple episodes on different things. And then I recently then I started creating the retreats. That came next. That felt really authentic. That felt really good. Then I started doing the smaller local events as like a spinoff on the big retreats. And I started doing podcast series to promote those events.
Okay.
So we just did a couples retreat here in St. Augustine. And so for a few weeks prior, I was doing a podcast series called the Power Couple Spotlight. And I was talking with couples or sometimes just one person from a couple, but what is your definition of a power couple? For me, it's two people who prioritize growth and, you know,
Mm.
not an image that I used to think of power couple as celebrity status kind of thing. But how do you channel that power couple mindset?
Yeah. How do you be for like yourself fully with another person in harmony?
Yes. Yeah. So we were having conversations about that on the podcast. That was really just, I have these conversations and I feel alive. I feel inspired. I'm getting new perspectives from so many people. So now I've discovered that I really like doing series and having different conversations with different people within a certain topic, if you will. But within that topic, you're going to go like all kinds of ways. And so but this is kind of in preparation for some corporate retreats that I'm going to be doing. Some kind of, this helps me get in the right mindset for those. And
Wow, that's perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, you're yeah, in following your passion, it's the natural path.
Mhm.
It's the path of least resistance. It's what we can all do, and we can really avoid so much suffering if we don't resist being who we are.
Mhm.
If we don't resist our natural tendencies, our natural flow of who we are and what we have to offer,
Yeah.
and
There's
sharing that.
joy. Like that's where we truly get joy in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the whole kit. It's the whole package because you feel like you're contributing to the world. You are contributing to the world. You're contributing to yourself. You're living an abundant life.
Yep.
You're meeting new people, which is what we want to do. We all want to connect and meet new people and develop new relationships and enjoy new experiences. And you're getting to do that. And some people that you meet like are just there for a small moment, and you learn to let go and
Mhm.
then trust that the right people will be there at the right times. And I love your definition of like of a power couple, and that whole idea of being a power couple is really, I think, is a profound opportunity available for any couple
Yeah.
to decide what that means for them and to become that. And I
Mhm.
think it really does come down to how much you're able to work with that person. And for me and Juliana, like the one thing that really came up recently was like, okay, we've established we have certain different places that we're at. And it's up to us if we're gonna do this together, we really do have to choose to match. One of us has got to match the other frequency, at least initially.
Mhm.
Like I love to look at it as the idea of like making music, harmony with another
Yes.
person. You have their signature sound and yours.
Yes.
And you're moving all up the spectrum, all up and down and making beautiful music, but within the same key.
Mhm.
Like you choose, somebody's got to set the tone in a
Mhm.
sense. What is the tone of this relationship going to be? And if you can work together on establishing a tone, great. Or if someone can say, "Oh, I like that. I'm going to join that tone, that
Mhm.
tune. Let's make a song. Let's make a beautiful music together.
Yep.
Let's see what comes out of this as, like I'm willing to match your frequency." And then that opens the door like for them to be wanting to match your frequency.
Yeah.
And for a long time, me and Julianne are like, no, this is the song I want to play. Well, yeah, well, this is what I want to play. So what are we going to do? You better come over here. No, you come over here. It's like,
Yeah.
and then one of us just has to be like, okay, I, I can see where you're coming from and I see the value of where you're at. I see the beauty in that. I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to add my sound to it. And from that place, it just immediately, it's like, okay, well, then I'm going to add to your sound. Okay. And it's like, it's that we have these childish, we still carry around like our inner child that is still has that little attitude of like, what about me? And like, especially if we haven't let go of it, if we don't trust and we're working through those, we're carrying these fears, these fear-based beliefs, and we can work with them. Like they don't have to be gone before you start making beautiful music. Sometimes the most epic music has such a dun 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 dun, it has such a like a low beginning, and then it builds and it fluctuates and it flows. So it doesn't have to be just like a one trajectory. And I think when you work with each other with the season that you're in, you can make beautiful music now, and it's not about just getting to the crescendo.
And you can take turns at being the lead singer,
Yes.
a lead
Yes.
musician, right? It's gonna ebb and flow,
Absolutely.
go all over the place, and
And that's part of like the surrendering your vision. Like that's such a key component, is when you're not surrendered, when you're holding on so tightly, it can't flow.
Mhm.
Like you're literally, think of like a torus field flow, and when you're holding on, it stops. And
Yeah.
you can't flow, and then when you try to flow again, there's so much pent up that it's a mess.
Yes.
So like if you can keep the flow going, I feel like you can move through so many vibrations quickly, and really get a really beautiful experience out of that.
Hmm. I love that music analogy. That's beautiful. Well
Yeah,
said.
because it's all frequency, it's all vibration,
Yeah.
and we are the musicians. We get to choose.
Yeah.
What's your kind of music?
Right.
Me and Matthew, we're gonna do my brother Matthew. We were driving home from North Carolina yesterday,
Mhm.
and uh, there was an open mic we were gonna try to hit, and
Mhm.
so like I was like sitting in the front seat practicing guitar, trying to like play a song. So we made a spin-off of the song, Make Your Own Kind of Music, sing your own special song.
Nice.
And we never got to play it at the open mic, but the idea was basically we took like you can take a beautiful song and play it in your own way, and play it your way. And
Mm.
you can also create your own kind of song. So there's beauty in playing another person's song and bringing honor to something beautiful that they've created. And there's a place for that, and that's
Mhm.
enjoyable. And there's also space to create your own and play that and bring your own version to what other people and build on. And I think that's what like a beautiful, thriving community looks like, is when there's not the holding on to, this is my intellectual rights, this is my property, and I can't lose it, and I can't let anybody exploit it, and I hope they don't take it, and what if I don't get money out of it, and those kinds of thoughts that I feel like are just blocking the flow of creating. And like there's more than enough, and I can always tap into more, I can always pull more out of this, and I can appreciate what others have given, and never in a place of wishing that it was mine, but just in a place of honoring and appreciating what was made, and bringing value to what other people have made in your community and in your circle. And then yeah, giving them more, well, just benefiting, just allowing yourself to open up and benefit from what other people have to share is such a two-way benefit street.
Yes.
When you're allowing yourself to, like, even just allowing what you shared into my heart, like in a sense, to it's a mutually beneficial
Yeah.
exchange of energy, and it's beautiful. And then
Yeah.
it creates a community where that's more flow.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
more energy.
that's what is enjoyable for me about, and enjoyable is not even the word. It's like so rewarding to have these conversations because, yeah, selfishly, I get to sit here and I get to be a part of it, right? But then I really believe in putting content like this out into the world, and the right people are going to hear it who
Yes.
could benefit from it.
Let your light shine.
That's it. That's it. So thank you for, I know there's like a lot of heaviness in the world right now. There's
Mm.
just the political climate is ridiculous, and the storms that we've had in Florida, and just so many being impacted by so many tragedies around the world. And there's been a very heavy energy
Mm.
I've been feeling, and having these conversations, it helps.
Yeah. And how do we connect with, this is a question that has definitely been what these hurricanes and these types of things have brought up within me. How do you connect empathetically, with people who are suffering, when in your world, like it's just so different. And what does that look like to go to their level and also and be with them and support them and help them? And for me, like it's had to come from a place of a place of having, taking care of myself to believe that I have something to give. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, I wish I could help, but I just, I've got all this going on in my world. But from a place of like, okay, of appreciation of what you've been given, to say, what, how can I empathize and connect with people that are going through this? And that's something like Julianne and I have been asking, is like, what is the most, appropriate response where you are recognizing where people are at, and it's a place that you don't prefer to be, but being with them in that and helping them out of that is such a beautiful, I feel like it's what so much have that inner desire that like we don't really know what to do with it.
Yes.
And like, yeah, there's platforms that you can donate and give, and there's chances to go volunteer. And I think that's where, at least for me personally, it's come down to a matter of trust and choosing to trust these things, choosing to trust that you're not going to be scammed by like fake donation sites and things like that. And also, but volunteering like more of who you are and sharing your voice and your perspective that can help people going through anything. Because really, like, there is always a positive that comes out of everything. Out of every storm, there's a rebuilding process. Yes, there's the time that really sucks about it, and there's a lot of things that come up, but maybe it's coming up for a beautiful reason. And maybe you can have a little bit of trust that things are going to work out, especially as you frame it in a positive way and don't let yourself go down into the depths, or go down in the depths and feel what's there, and then enjoy the process of coming out of it, because it's all valid. It's all a valid experience.
I wrote a blog just a couple days ago. What day did the storm hit? Thursday. I wrote it Thursday.
For Milton?
Yeah.
Milton? Yeah.
It's feeling the heaviness of it. My conversations with clients the day before had been very heavy with anxiety, just in different things from people. So just feeling all of that. And that's when I have to write or something and get it out,
Express,
right?
Yeah.
To express it. And what ended up coming out in my blog was the different groups, if you will, of helpers. So, because what I tend to feel is like, oh man, here I'm sitting in a nice office and having conversations with people. Yes, I'm helping them, but why am I not on the ground in North Carolina helping? Why am I not, and you can
Yeah.
feel
And what fears are behind that? That's a good question
right.
too.
Exactly. And then it was like, wait, you're holding space for people right here who need you. So allow yourself to show up in the way that you're needed right now. Stop comparing your role to someone else's role. They're equally important to the people that are receiving the benefits from them. And that's
such a brilliant perspective, because there's such an element of trust woven into that. That like the idea that we have to physically do anything is kind of comes from it can come from like a fear-based negative place, where I'm not worth anything if I don't help in this particular way, which is kind of what we may have been taught in a certain way. Like, if you're not working hard,
yes,
you're not worth anything. That was a big one for me.
Stems from ego, really.
Yeah, because like in the big picture of everything, the right, like, there's so much in motion that's out of your control that is exactly as it should be. And that's where the element of trust comes in, that like, I'm not feeling excited, pulled, called to go and be in person on this particular event. But if I was, I know I would have the energy to go and it would be perfect.
Yes.
And then that's the trust that like, this because I'm excited to do this is where I'm supposed to be. Because can you imagine if everybody in the world just felt called to it, like how crowded the roads would be to just get to like these areas, and there's so much of that going on. And like, I think what the news doesn't focus on, which is really going on, and like I was just up in North Carolina and I wasn't helping with any relief. I was just doing my own thing selfishly. Um, and but just seeing the amount of people that are getting a chance to use their equipment to help, and like, and the workers on the telephone poles, and how people are coming together to, to make this happen, and how everybody's coming closer together. It's like, heck yeah, this is perfect from that perspective. People have to come together now. Oh, shucks, like we have to get together and work together. What a big problem, right?
I love it. Well, Nathan, this has been a really powerful and enriching conversation. I
Indeed.
thank you for your time.
Thank you for the space and your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Heather. Take care.
Take care.